Hello, Acolytes! Welcome to the Cleric Corner. My name is Riker, and here we talk about all things Dungeons & Dragons, tapping into our higher powers to create worlds more unique and stories more impactful. Hello! We are back with another live stream. I know last week we were a little bit out of sync when it came to the live stream. We didn't really have anyone, we didn't have really... Last week was the, let me rewind, last week was the one D&D playtest where we had wanted to do it at the regular time because on that Wednesday they had figured, hey, we're going to put out a bunch of videos about 1D&D and what is in the content, what's in the big PDF or playtest, and then we're not going to give you the playtest until 24 hours in advance, or 24 hours in the future. And so that was Wednesday. And then, I was like, I could have made a live stream about something else, right? I could have made a live stream about just the videos, but instead I decided, hey, we'll wait 24 hours and we'll make it happen on Thursday. So hopefully that doesn't switch around or mix everything up as far as live streams go. So who do we have? We have 6 people watching, but nobody's saying hi. Say hi, guys. Say hi. Maybe you guys can help me out today. This will be another Q&A live stream. So if you guys have questions in the chat, obviously let me know. Put big questions in all caps, and then I will. Then we'll start talking about different ways that we can look at the game of D&D and add some flavor to it. Also, if you want to super chat, that's great too as well. Then we can spend a little bit more time and go into depth with those things. And obviously, always appreciate some donations to help the channel in continuing this process of creating videos for all of you guys, which I have thoroughly enjoyed this last year. So we have Yamil Diaz in the chat. Hello, welcome. First one, Ben. Hello. You know what I probably should do? I'm thinking that when I start this live, it takes YouTube so long to tell you guys about it. So maybe I'll ask you guys, should I start live and then wait to get on for a good 5 minutes? I think a couple other YouTubers do that, and maybe I just get ahead of myself. I'm just excited to come on and see you guys and talk to you guys, right? Just excited to interact with my community, that my wonderful community that we've built over the last year and a couple months or so. But hello, Octonico. Oh, that's a cool name, Octonico. Have you been in the chat before? Welcome. So again, while I give a shout out to our Patreon members, if you do have questions, let me know. But of course, I have to give a big shout out to the people who make all of this possible, my Patreon members who, if you do want to support me in that way, there is lots of perks with Discord, personal one-on-ones with me, possible games in the future, as well as a monthly magazine that I give out each month for flavor and things like that. We've done Adventures in Space with Spelljammer. This month we did Blood and Brains. Next month we got some pretty exciting stuff coming out. Yeah, so if you want to do that, we also are always looking for people to come and help us join in on the whole content creation process on my Discord. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check out the scriptorium on there and help us out with a few things that we make every month. So anyways, thank you so much for our Cleric Scott Burns, our Acolytes, Kaleidoscope and Weaver Atropos, Disciples, Christian Roberts, Ryan Ramirez, Christopher Byram, Melkadeel, Christopher Olsen, Joseph Rogers, Oren Hammerquist, Matt Clark, and 95 miles per hour Tonberry. Thank you guys so much again. All right, we got, according to the Spiffing Brit, you should never start the stream? What does that mean? I should never, somebody else should start the stream? Octonico, I've been here once, work and school takes up a lot of my time. Oh, I get that. But I've been trying to get into D&D in my free time. Oh, you're trying to get into it. That's awesome. That's fantastic. I have a bunch of people that I'm actually doing a one-shot for this weekend, and not one of them has played D&D before. Not one of them. So, it doesn't matter how many times you do it. I still get a little nervous DMing for newbies, but I think that they bring a lot, a whole lot to the game as far as creativity goes. Because the one thing that kind of going on a little spiel here, the first thing that I had, or that caused me to fall in love with the game, was just the freedom within it, right? Being able to choose everything or anything and do anything, not limited by any bounds of most board games or video games. If you can do it in real life, you can attempt it in D&D. And that was the first concept that I had ever seen along those lines. And when it comes to having new players join in, it's so cool to see kind of the light bulb turn on with that specific, with that same revelation, right? That moment where they're sitting there and they're like, oh, well, can I do this? And you're like, yeah. And then they just be like, it's like that one, oh, what movie is it? I don't know. It's like lights come up and they're like a radiant blast hits their face and their hair is blasted back in the wind. It's just this revelation, like it's a revelatory experience for them. And that's the moment where people fall in love with D&D, right? So, Ben, watch this video. It's amazing. Before you start the stream, your engagement increases. Oh, so, okay, Spiffing Brit. I'll write that down. Thank you so much. If he is another YouTuber, Spiffing Brit. Yeah, I've been looking at, obviously, like, as a YouTuber, you always have to look at other videos about how to better YouTube, right? Because this is being in this sphere, and especially if you want to make it a full-time gig, it takes some effort. It does. It really does. It takes some effort. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of figuring things out, just like any job, right? Where you have to figure out the ins and outs, what works, what doesn't, how you fit into it, and especially in this sphere where you have to be at least unique, the fastest, or the best, essentially. But even though there's still a lot of room in the YouTube sphere, and I'm always excited to see new and upcoming D&D YouTubers, because I kind of feel like I'm still considered one, you know. I'm kind of, to me, I consider myself still like an up-and-coming YouTuber. I don't think I've made it to, I don't think I've made it, right? I don't think I've made it. And I don't know what that looks like. Maybe 100K. So I'm at 12K. I think that maybe, I think it would be really, really cool to hit 30K by August this year, or this next year. So like in a year. Like I did 10K in 1 year. Maybe I can reach 30K in the next year or so. That would be incredible. But of course, anything past that is even better. But obviously, you guys have been amazing in my community to make what has happened already, and so I'm just excited to see what the future holds. Tunico says, I feel that with the oh wow moment in D&D. Yeah, I watched the campaign at a Comic-Con and was amazed with the variety in story and characters. Yes, that's another moment, right? Where I think in character creation, you kind of just, what's the better word for this? You gravitate towards general tropes in D&D, right? You gravitate toward the fighter dwarf, right? You gravitate toward the spellcaster elf. You gravitate towards the rogue halfling, right? These things that are recognizable to you in the sphere that you've lived with fantasy, right? A lot with like Lord of the Rings or House of Dragon or other things like that, where you have in your mind what fantasy is and what these fantasy tropes are, especially and more or less in like a medieval type setting, where and this was for me, I'm not talking to everybody, but kind of sitting down and figuring out that we can create our own fantasy and define fantasy how we want to was another just big moment for me. And as you guys know, like a big thing that I have, or a big inspiration for this channel, is just making our own fantasy. Having our own creative license on what that looks like, because there are so much out there apart from what regular media or the regular population knows as fantasy, if that makes sense. Let's see, what other, you guys share more of your oh wow moments in D&D. This is actually pretty nostalgic for me. I remember the first time that we decided to have a game or to do a campaign. I shared a little bit in a live stream a couple weeks ago, and it was the story of how I kind of got people into D&D. I did a video on like a D&D light that I usually do for people who are just they're not really in the headspace for a D&D-esque type of game, so I do like more of a card improv game. And so I got a bunch of people to my house. We played D&D the first time. They're like, hey, this is kind of fun. We should do it again. And I'm like, awesome. All I really expected at that point was maybe just like a one-shot, like a one-off, maybe every now and then. We were like, hey, come together, play maybe the same characters, and we just kind of do like a different adventure. Kind of episodic, but not even really related to each other. I still kind of treated it like a board game, right? Where you kind of start over every time that you start the board game, even though you may use the same like Monopoly characters or Monopoly like meeples, right? And so it was about like the third time in where someone on the table or at the table said, hey, why don't we come over to my place? I got this really cool idea. We will play instead of like on a piece of paper, I can like project it on the screen. And we're like, oh, that sounds interesting. That sounds great. And we go, and I think I actually let him kind of decide what we play, right? So he's kind of running the adventure. And I did this the entire first campaign where we switched off who the DM was, and they just continued the story from there. It was kind of fun. It was still like me and one other guy kind of like making sure that the story stays linear, if that makes sense, or the story makes sense. And so anyways, we go over to his house, and he has this big, his screen up, and it's basically, he got up, what was it, PowerPoint or something like that, where he just had a grid map and then little icons for our minis. And we played that, and he tied that one this single adventure to the original adventure that we had the first time. And that was just the moment that we thought, oh, this could be something. Like, this could be a story. This could be an adventure. This could go somewhere and have a resolution. This is great. And so we actually, that night, when we ended that, we sat down and we're like, hey guys, do you want to like make this a thing? And everyone's like, well, yeah, let's do it. And so basically I said, okay, well, if we're going to make this a thing, I want everyone to be happy with their characters. So if you want to continue with the character you have, great. If you want something different, make it now. And I think I made a different one. If I remember right, I think I originally played a druid, but then I switched to a barbarian. And he was a water genasi barbarian. I loved him to this day, even though I didn't know how to play him that well. There's a lot of math to the barbarian. Thankfully, D&D Beyond does all the math for us nowadays. Yeah, from that point on, we did I think it was a 2-year campaign. Where no, it wasn't that. Wasn't that much. It was maybe a year and a half, where we switched every time. And yeah, Octanito switching the DM. Wow, that had to be crazy. It was crazy, and it was funny because we all one-upped each other, right? So I began just kind of pulling out like a piece of paper, like a what's it called? It's almost, it's like just craft paper, right? It's just craft paper, right? I just put that out. I draw with a ruler the grid lines because I didn't know like actual mats existed at that point. So I draw those, and then I would take like some colored pencil and I would draw the map on the area that we were going to explore. And so it was actually very map focused, and I actually liked that about the kind of the old days of how we played. But then the next person would see that, and they would kind of one-up it, right? So the next time we had someone, instead of just the map, they also had separate icons that we could take and put it on almost like a puzzle. There was a puzzle, like a room puzzle that we could interact with, and that was pretty cool. And then the next time, they started using cardboard. So now we had cardboard houses kind of piled on top of each other, and it wasn't really... it wasn't well done, right? But now we had a 3D effect. And then the next person next week comes in, and we had one girl in this group that was specifically very crafty. She does cosplay and things like that. And it eventually escalated to where this one point, she went and got styrofoam. She was molding the styrofoams into houses and mushrooms and crystals and things like that, and they were hand painting them, and we're creating this basically a modular map, kind of like how is it called Dungeon Forge? what's that company? Something like that. I think you know what I'm talking about, but something like that, where we actually had our own pieces, and we had a big box that would tote around, and it would eventually, and I would go over and help her kind of create these items, and then eventually just kind of grew and grew and grew. And then we got to a point where we ended that campaign, and then we stopped. Life got busy. Work came up for a bunch of us. And I stopped playing for a good, I'd say 6 months, maybe a year. And then one of those players in my Dwarven Forest, thank you, Nerdy Dalek. Nerdy Dalek, that's a cool name too. A full year, but one of those players in that group started to play again with a couple of those same players that we had at our original table, plus a few more. And a couple months after they started, I'm like, hey, I miss it really bad. I want to get started doing this again. I need to start playing. Do you have an open seat? And he's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So then I came to his table and I started playing as just solely him as a DM. And at that point, he got the map. He got the actual map you could draw on and things like that. And I don't know why we didn't use the... yeah, no, I do. I do know that why we stopped using those tileable things, because it got way too much work, right? Because again, work, work, personal life. I think the girl who made those things was actually engaged at that point to someone else on the table playing with us, and she stopped making them because she had no time, or no one had time. But it worked out because then we started playing in a way that wasn't so map focused and more like reactionary. And so if we were in a place of combat, he could whip that out and draw something instead of having to make sure that he had the right pieces and then compile those things. And we didn't have every terrain, right? We didn't have like a desert terrain. We didn't have a river terrain. We had mostly just grassland and rocks, right? But it was a really, really cool time, and just seeing the growth. I don't know if you guys can relate, but just seeing the growth of when you started D&D and how you play now, or with what you play now, is just so cool to me. So cool to me, because how I do D&D now is just so completely different from the way it used to be. And some things I miss. Some things I feel like I've gotten into some bad habits, I feel, like anyone. And I do miss some of those original things that we did. Even though maybe that might not be somebody else's playstyle. Again, you figure that out as you go, and I feel like that's the process, right? Is you start out playing one way, and then you grow to play a certain way, and you grow to have to make it fun. Thing is, with players, they're used to playing different ways with every DM, and so it's fun just kind of seeing how that changes and how you influence each other over time. Octanito says, was there a time that you were irritated when it came to D&D, whether it be a campaign or how someone set up their character? Ooh, yes. Yes. It comes down to play style, right? And I think at the beginning of when I started playing D&D, there was a disconnect with how I wanted to play and how other people wanted to play, and how I wasn't as open about that as I should have been. But I do still have a thing about joke characters. Characters, because here's my kind of philosophy, right? Joke characters, they're a punchline. And in a campaign, that punchline can only be said so much before it kind of gets old and before it lacks depth and it's very shallow. Where one-shots, it's fantastic because you get in there, you make the punchline, it's fun, it's playful, it's awesome, great. One-shots, perfect for joke characters. We had one person in our D&D game who was the jokester, and he wasn't only the joke character, but this joke character was also the same player that quotes, "This is just what my character would do." And so there was a lot of ways that he just played the way he wanted to play. He played very, very chaotically, and more often than not, it did come at a detriment to the party. And eventually he did have to leave, but it was consistent enough with every character that he had that it became an irritation. If that's kind of what you're getting at, that's kind of what you're getting at. But I love the person to death. He's fantastic. Love it. I just didn't really like the decisions that he made as a character, or as playing his characters. Because for me, in how I kind of play the game is I want to create a story, right? I want to create something impactful. I want to feel emotion. I want to crack jokes too. Don't get me wrong. I want to have fun, but I also want the story that we play to be meaningful, right? I don't want it to be just a regular night playing Uno or catchphrase, right? To me, D&D is something different, but again, that's just could be me perceiving it in my way and not others' ways. So, again, being a DM is all about kind of figuring out your playstyle and making sure you have fun, but also catering to other people's playstyles as well. And when someone comes to your table with this joke character and also this is what my character would do kind of character, then just learning to have that conversation and making sure that other characters or other players aren't inhibited by that. Hopefully all that made sense. Nerdy Dalek says, question, I know that you've done a video fleshing out the Shadowfell using Van Richten's, but have you thought about doing a character idea video for the setting or just Barovia spooky season? That's a great question because that's exactly what I edited today. That's a fantastic question. So in my undead video or better undead video that I did last week, toward the beginning, it actually shows you all of the thumbnails for all of the videos that I'm doing this month for spooky season. And actually 2 videos are on about Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft and the contents within, which is obviously including Barovia. So I'm actually super excited for that one. And guys, actually, so one of those, another one of those videos too that I'm doing. So if you follow my channel for a while, you know that a lot of my or one series that I'm doing is punk genres in D&D. And I did solar punk. I did a whole exploration of all the punks in another video. For a spooky season, I'm doing splatterpunk, which is kind of a horror, a very horror punk genre. And I'm gonna tell you what, I got disturbed editing that video. There is a huge trigger warning on that video because splatterpunk is a very specific kind of punk, and it's only for a very specific kind of people. So, but it's up, it's edited, it's going. It's just know that I was disturbed doing it, so you might be a little disturbed watching it. But I'm excited to see how polarizing the views on will that be. It's either going to flop so hard or it's going to actually do really well. So we'll see. There are either going to be people saying, this is awesome, like I love horror and this is right up my alley, or there are going to be people saying like, no one should ever play this at my table because it's too tricking and I don't want to have that conversation at session 0, if that makes sense. Yeah. Ben says, what my character would do is a shadow ban phrase at my table. I could see why. Yeah, because that's the thing is like, yeah, that's what your character would do, but you made that character. You made a character that would do that. And that's the problem, right? It's not that that's what your character would do, right? I always love that you do what your character would do, but if you make a character that what they would do is detrimental to everyone else at the table and impeding their fun, that's the issue, right? That's the issue. So yeah, honestly, like when it gets to that point, first time I'll be like, hey, you're doing this, like this is causing a problem at the table. I would suggest maybe quirking your personality or how you approach your character in these ways. That might help the fluidity of everyone's fun. And if that doesn't work, then I'll be like, I'll probably give him one more warning, but then I'll be like, hey, this character is not great. It doesn't seem like you can figure out a way to make this work at the table. So I'm going to ask you to make a new character, and we'll figure out a way to take this one out and put this one in next game, right? And then if they bring another one in and it continues to be a problem, this one causes the same issues as before, that's when I know that it's not the character, it's the player, right? And the player shouldn't The player, it just, again, has a certain way of doing things, and their playstyle is better fit at someone else's table. And that's kind of, I think that kind of does everyone a service too, is because they probably don't like someone or a DM coming up to them and saying like, hey, you're playing your character wrong, or hey, you can't have fun in these ways, right? They probably don't like that. And so it would be better for them to find a game where everyone's chaotic, everyone plays that way, everyone's a murder hobo, and maybe they'll enjoy it a little bit better. So yeah, it always precedes something idiotic. Yeah, it depends on every person. It really does. Every person is different. Because you have there's a lot of different types of players, right? There's also the min-maxers, right? There's the metagamers. There is the storytellers. There is the improvers. There is the... Oh, what other ones are there? There's a whole list of them. Actually, should we look it up? This might be fun. Types of players in D&D. Okay, so yeah, there's the storyteller, which is, again, that's kind of like what I am. Like, I want to tell a story through my character. I want him to have him or her to have an arc. I want to have a rising and falling. I want to create an interaction that invokes emotion, right? There's the explorer, which is obviously the person that goes around. Actually, I could probably show you guys while you're looking. So there's the... Well, can I just look at this? Hopefully there's no ads. Okay, yeah, so the explorer likes to explore things. Yeah, let's just look at this. Ancient civilization or something, hidden treasure. So they're kind of like the ones that like the treasure. They're the ones that are always, getting into... They're like the toddler. They're like the 2-year-old toddler that loves to get into everything, right? They're, what's this? What does this do? What do I do? What happens when I interact with this? Not necessarily in a masochistic way. No, that's not the right word. In a destructive way? Right. A destructive way where maybe your toddler is that. But in a way that, is productive, right? Then there's the actor. It's the role play, right? They're the ones making voices. They're the ones interacting with the NPCs. I also like to do this as well. I do this a lot, obviously, as a DM, but that's kind of comes with the territory. I love the acting. I love the improv, especially when I can play with like heaviness in a game. When I can invoke through an NPC of like what the situation really means at the moment. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but again, when I can accomplish a heaviness with an NPC, I love that feeling. I love that feeling. Just rewatch the beginning of that video. How did I miss the Ravenloft bit? yeah. It's right. Maybe I don't know if I mentioned that, like, hey, I'm doing a lot of videos, but I don't mention everyone specifically. It's just kind of like rolls like credits on the side. So it's it's like an Easter egg, right? You gotta be watching out. Gotta be watching out. Octanico, what's your favorite character that you have made for a campaign? Oh, that's such a good question. Oh, I love so many. What's my favorite one that I've had? There's so many ads, guys. What is my favorite one? What's interesting is that, and I think it's actually self-explanatory. It's not that, like, out there. But I feel like I love characters more after I played them. Right? Where it's kind of like I almost miss them. And I realize, like, what a great character or person or, a story that I had with them. And so I played a lot of characters. There was one character that probably would have been my favorite, but they died within like 5 sessions, which was unfortunate. But I think, honestly, my favorite character would have been an Aasimar blood hunter by the name of Toma. And she was a half angel, of course, because ASMR. However, and again, this is a conversation that I had with my DM. It's a conversation that you should have with your DM. But part of her backstory was that she was raped by a devil, and she had a half devil, half angel child. And this was all previously, like, we didn't role play that. We didn't, that just happened, and it never really came up again in the game, other than I have a devil kid, and this devil kid I gave up for adoption because I saw it as this evil thing, and it was almost kind of like a story of me and this is weird as a white male to say, but me accepting like the motherhood of this child, because being a half angel, half demon, that's pretty crazy, right? Some evil people would want to get their hands on that, so that's what happened. They were abducted from this orphanage, and they were basically put in a demi-plane and aged 100 years in the future. So they ended up being older than I was by the time that I interacted with this character again. And I was able to have a redemption arc with this son of mine, which was honestly really, really cool. And I really liked the character too, because she was sassy. She didn't take crap from anyone. She was very aggressive, but also very kind-hearted. She followed the what's the god that Pike follows? The Everlight. She followed the Everlight. So even though she was this very sassy, very aggressive person, she had a very, very kind heart, and she followed. She was basically a part of this coven of women that does kindness and hunts demons, right, as a blood hunter. So, anyways, that was a long explanation. So thanks for thanks for waiting for that explanation. But I love that character, and honestly, I would die to play her again. Okay, Yamil Diaz. Any character type that you always wanted to be played at your table that haven't had a chance yet? Yes. That's a great question. Fantastic question. I think we all kind of have those, right? Let me know actually what you guys, if there's any character types that you've wanted to play in the chat. I want to riff off of you guys. But there are two classes that I have had a trouble liking the trope, if that makes sense. I love clerics because of the fantasy feeling that you get, what they're recognized as, how they play, things like that. I love ranger for the exploration. I love bows and arrows. I love those kind of things, or those aspects of a ranger, so I really love playing those. However, the fantasy of a paladin and a fantasy of the wizard is not something that I've particularly been drawn to. So for those two things, I really wanted to, next campaign, that's kind of my goal, is to make a paladin that I really will enjoy, or make a wizard that I will really enjoy as well. To make a character concept that really speaks to me, apart from the tropes that maybe, or with the tropes, who knows, that maybe I haven't thought of yet, or will help me like those tropes a little bit better. But I think, again, I think everyone has the one or two. A lot of people don't like the cleric. A ton of people don't like the cleric. I'm actually surprised. A lot of people, at the beginning of my channel, I have a lot of comments that say, and I don't know where they all went, but I had a lot of comments then that say, oh, I couldn't play cleric because of all the religious trauma that I have. Which is understandable, right? Because that's a real thing. It's a real thing. But it surprised me because I never even thought of that. Because I grew up religious, and I feel like I don't really interact with the cleric as much as I do my religious parts of my life, right? It's kind of, there is a disconnect for me, but there's not necessarily a disconnect for everybody else, which is very, very interesting. So anyways, I think that it's cool and almost insightful to know what kind of characters and what kind of tropes people are drawn to, because I feel like a lot of people are drawn to the warlock and the rogue, And I'm probably more drawn to the warlock than I am the rogue, but you always know the type of person that plays the warlock or a rogue, right? You always know. You always know that type of person. Emil, that's a bit surprising since I feel that paladin is not that different from a cleric, at least in theme. Yeah! No, you're right. You're right. Like, those people who say, like, oh, I can never play a cleric, they're perfectly fine playing a paladin. I don't know. I don't know. Because I feel like, you know, I don't know. If it's almost like the cleric is worshiping the religion, and then the paladins are fighting for the religion. And I don't know. Maybe there's a different interaction there. But it's funny that you pointed that out because that's exactly what I found too. Is a lot of people are like, oh, I can't play a cleric because of my religious trauma. But what about a paladin? Oh, yeah, those are fine. I'll play a paladin. Oh, okay. Paladins are just himbo clerics. Yeah, I get that. I do. And I don't know what it is about paladins that I'm like... Actually, I do know what I don't like about paladins. Because with the cleric domains, you have a lot of domains and spells and damage types and features that evoke the person that they're following, right? The god that they're following. And paladins don't. They have more things to do with like their ideals or why they're following that god instead of the god themselves, right? So you could be a paladin of Cord, but you're not going to get any lightning abilities, right? Your smite is not going to be lightning damage, like Thor, essentially, right? And I feel like if you wanted to play Thor, you'd probably play a paladin, right? Because I feel like that would probably be the closest in fantasy trope to any of the classes. Except if you do that, you can't really be Thor because you don't have like thunderous. You have the spell Thunderous Smite, but the damage that you're doing on a regular basis isn't thunder damage or lightning damage. So to me, I would probably in most cases I might just change the damage type, and obviously that would do leaps and bounds for me with the paladin as well. Paladins should be more traumatic than clerics. Yeah, they're definitely... I feel like paladins are more... Historically, they are more bound to their religion. They are more devout to their religion, right? Where a cleric might be someone who is learning the religion, or that their god gave them this power, and not necessarily something that they have fought for, if that makes sense. It's really interesting, kind of like finding the balance between paladins and clerics. Octanico, what is the class that makes be like haven't seen that in a while? What is the class that makes me be like haven't seen that in a while? Artificer is always a rare one at the table for some reason. I feel like Artificer is actually pretty popular among people. Like, a lot of people like the Artificer. I do not like the Artificer. That's worse on the totem pole for Wizard and Paladin. I just think that it was not made well, and that's really it. I love the trope. I love the evocative spell infusing contraption building aesthetic of the Artificer. I just don't feel like it evokes the type of Artificer trope in the mechanics. And I don't feel like I'm playing an Artificer when I play an Artificer, if that makes sense. Like, if I'm playing a Cleric, I feel like I'm playing a Cleric. If I'm playing a Ranger, I feel like I'm playing a Ranger. If I'm a Warlock, I feel like I'm playing a Warlock. And to me, there is just a little bit of disconnect for the Artificer. And that's just me. And so a lot of people... but a lot of people like and speak highly of the Artificer, but not a lot of people play it. I've seen one. In all of my days of playing D&D, which is coming up on 5 years now, probably, I've never seen but one an Artificer person. Well, not one person, just one person play an Artificer. So maybe I should do that. Maybe I'll play an Artificer, Paladin, Wizard multi-class next time to figure out something fun. Yeah, the Cleric is chosen by God. A Paladin fights to be recognized by God. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, obviously, if you've watched my Cleric video, right, I feel like Like, those can be the common trope, but you can obviously switch those around. A cleric can be just recognized by a god, and a paladin can be chosen by a god. Just depends on how you get your magic and how your magic is translated in mechanics-wise into a realm of magic. So, and that just goes with anything, right? I can say that I'm a cleric and just have warlocky powers, right? But I can get the magic just the same as I did as a cleric. I'll just be using the warlock stats to explain the magic that flows through me instead. If that makes sense. Tyler Williams, I always felt like the cleric chooses the god while the god chooses the paladin. That's also one way you could do it. I think all of those are correct, right? Because again, it's fantasy, and we can make it the way that we want to make it, right? Falstar, that's why the paladin is so uncomfortable, is because they fight to be recognized by the god. So it's like you're trying to prove yourself to them. Is that why it's uncomfortable? Nerdy Dalek, okay, here we go. Battlesmith Artificer plus Blade Singer Wizard is generally really good for multiclassing. Plus you get to be a mathlete. Ooh, I'd have to look at that. Yeah, that's basically like a melee with the companion plus spellcasting. You kind of get a little bit of everything. If I would choose, honestly though, like a wizard, which one would I choose, guys? If I choose, should we just make a character right now? I've always leaned toward, I love transmutation magic. I've been kind of really enjoying abjuration magic recently for some reason. It's just kind of cool, you know, like fighting through defense, which is also really cool. If you checked out my last magazine for last month, the Adventures in Space with My Higher Powers magazine, we made a helm wizard. So with Spelljammer, right, you know that the Spelljammer helm, or the seat that it takes to drive a Spelljammer, it requires a spellcaster to attune to in order to drive it. And so we thought it was a really cool idea to take a wizard subclass and make it just all about doing that. A specialist when it comes to a Spelljammer helm. So it's called a Helm Wizard, and you get a whole bunch of really cool perks when it comes to interacting with your ship, being able to cast spells on it, and being able to summon it from far away and things like that. Even being interacting with it away from your chair. It's really, really cool. But if and I say that just not to like self-promote, but to say that if we do a Spelljammer campaign next, which we're thinking about doing, that is a high contender to do that. Falstar, or say you're a cleric and actually be a bard with an acolyte background. Yeah. And with the 1 D&D stuff, you're basically a cleric anyways, as a bard. You're basically a cleric, right? Your bardic inspiration is a guidance, and you have all of the healing spells that you need, right? It's basically it. Oh no, we have bad bots. We're going to report you. Where are my mods? Okay. Remove those. Do it. Make a character now. I'd be down to see the process done by a veteran D&D player. Ooh, I would totally. We don't really have that the time though to do that, but I would absolutely love to do that. I did. If you look at my live stream playlist, there was a cool couple live streams that we did that we made a lobster warlock. A warlock of Bliptoopulp, which is basically a lobster god of the Kuatoa fish people. Basically, they believed in this god hard enough that it became into reality. And it was a big thing in my current campaign. So we're like, hey, let's make a warlock of this lobster god and make a lobster-themed warlock. So if you want to watch me make me and the chat make a character, that's in the playlist on my channel. So Nerdy Daleks is basically the big thing of the multiclass is that Battlesmith attacks with intelligence. Blade Singers have AC based on intelligence, and both cast on intelligence. Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. Yeah, that's an excellent interaction. Absolutely. Dagger Mouse, hey, I just wanted to share less of a reflavor and more of a mechanical change, but I revised a few of the player handbook races to keep them updated more for Monsters of the Multiverse. Oh, okay. Yeah, fun. Awesome. Oh, where were we? I actually wanted to get back to this, too, because I thought that this was interesting, and if you guys are interested, too, I like this kind of stuff. Different types of players. So we already talked about the storyteller, the explorer, the actor, the warrior. They're kind of like, they're the ones that want to be there and fight. They love combat. They're there for the combat. They feel like D&D is a game of combat, and so that's what they're there to do, right? They want to skip the role play. They're exactly the opposite of the actor. They want to skip the role play and get right to the fighting. The problem solver, they're the ones that, to me, that they're the ones that are taking notes. They're the ones that are trying to figure things out. They're the ones that are wanting to know little bits of the lore to tie it all together and figure you out, right? And this is probably my favorite player to have at the table because I have a lot of cool things that are kind of in the midst. And I do a lot of things in my game where if you're paying attention, you will get a lot of information, but only if you're paying attention. And so I love these kind of players because it's really fun to me to see a player, again, have just light bulb moments where they tie two things together and they're like, wait, this. And then they'd be like, absolutely correct. Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Optimizer, yeah, we talked about min-max players, right? They're the ones that want to be powerful and figure out different ways to put things together. I am not this at all, because again, right, I'm a storyteller, so I'm not here to optimize my character. I'm not here to get the best of one thing. I want my character to grow throughout a campaign. I want to see the weaknesses in them. I want to play a character and not a stat block, right? Not to say that that's who they're playing, but they are more than any other trope. The investigator, they're the one. How are they different from the explorer? I think these are the ones that probably aren't exploring for the sake of exploring, but are exploring for the sake of making things happen. Because right here it says a big red button, and they're going to press it. So I can see them honestly sometimes being prob players because they're like, oh, we got to figure out how to undo this trap, and then the investigator is going to be like, oh, well, I'll just walk through it, see what happens. Okay, everyone roll a dexterity saving throw, and you take this much damage, right? So, anyways, I thought that's fun, and I like those kind of things. Tanika, I'm the problem solver. That's awesome. Yeah, the problem solver? Good. You are a blessing to DMs of all kinds. I guess if a problem solver only works if you actually solve the problem, right? Which is awesome. Dagger Mouse, changing them from a campaign setting a little bit as well. A demon that's a concept of death embodied. Their tiefling gets necrotic resistance instead of just blanket fire resistance for every subrace. Yeah, they're doing that with the new tiefling. With the 1D&D playtest, the first one. They had a race, the tiefling, and now you get your choice not only with fire resistance, but also I think necrotic and cold that you get to choose from, which is also really cool. Ben is an investigator. No? Wait. Investigator, no V? I don't know what that means. If you are an investigator... again, investigator also has their place at the table, because if you have a bunch of people at the table who are... This is the kind of the dichotomy between the problem solver and the investigator, because the problem solver wants to solve out the problem, right? So they're going to come up to this trap, and they're going to try to figure out every which way to undo the trap before they get through it, where the investigator is the one that's going to just plow through. And so it's good to have both of them at the table, because the problem solver will slow the investigator down and say, hey, we need to figure this out, and maybe not do as much damage. And then the investigator will say, like, hey, let's stop just talking about something for 3 hours and let's actually do something. And it'll push the problem solver to kind of go and do things, which is, it's good to have a lot of these things at the table. It's not good to have just problem solvers at your table, right? Hey, Corrado, we got Corrado in the chat. The explorer is passive, and there's a world to explore, while the investigator is active and investigates things and changes the world. Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So you're saying, like, the explorer is more reactionary and the investigator is more actionary. Reactionary versus actionary. And I like that. Yeah, I didn't have it. Daggerman says you don't have time to keep up with doing D&D. It's a lot. It's a lot. I did another live stream last week that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, where we went over just briefly all of the things in 1D&D. There was a couple things that I missed because obviously I tried to get everything at once. But the 1D&D playtest, or this one, is going to be out for another month. So the survey isn't going to be out until, I think, 3 weeks from now, I believe. So you have plenty of time to read it over yourself and go over it. I think it's like 40 pages, though. So, Ben, what I'm trying to say, Instigator. Is there an Instigator? Yeah, it's the Instigator. Big red button. Yep. Oh, yeah. So was I saying Investigator? Was I saying... I was saying Investigator that whole time, wasn't I? I meant Instigator. That's what was confusing me. Wow. Thanks, guys. This is why you're here. I also want to put in one more character type, or one more player type that's not listed on here. And I feel like they are also in a lot of games. What are they called? I would say that they're like a socializer, but not in the way that the actor is, where the actor is more the roleplay person and here for the game. The socializer is here for the people, right? They honestly are so happy playing any game. It just happens to be Dungeons and Dragons, where they come and they play. They like to sit around the table. They'll roll dice, but at the end of the day, it's just being around their friends that they enjoy, and they'll play with anybody. They'll play anything, and those are also really fun because I think they ground everyone as well, and they're also the ones that sometimes in moments of roleplay and combat, you can find them on their phone or getting up and eating snacks while there's like a heavy beat going on, and sometimes they don't quite grasp the difference between this game and other board games. But again, that's not every case. But I've had those at my table as well. Yeah, that's the good friend role. Yeah. And they're here for support. They're here to support you. They're here to be with you. They're appreciative of you playing the game. And hey, sometimes they're a really good snack maker. They're usually the one bringing the snacks too. They are the good friend. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that I have ever had I've had an instigator. I've had an optimizer. I've been kind of a problem solver. I probably haven't had a problem solver, at least not a dominant one in my campaigns. Definitely had a warrior. I was the actor. Haven't had an explorer, not really. One that wants to get to every nook and cranny of the dungeon. No. Usually they go to like the quicker route and they're happy to defeat the boss and leave. And I do play with a storyteller, and I freaking love those people as well. Freaking love those people. Ben says, "Oh yes, 2 in my group, super fun to play with, but you have to keep them on task." Yeah, the good friend role. Yeah, it's a thing. And sometimes it's cool because like the good friend that we had in our group, she was big into like art. And so it was fun to see like some character art that she drew afterwards. She had no idea what was going on, but we had some cool character art at the end of the day because she drew, which is also fun. Karaito, I feel seen. That's the only reason I volunteered to write during a session, so I keep engaged. Yeah. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you need to do that, even if you're not like the good friend role. Sometimes you do need to just like do something else while you're playing. I've actually found that especially true while I'm playing like online games, and it doesn't help that I have like a dual screen. So I'll be playing on one side, and it's funny because like when I play, I'm also like game prepping for the one that I DM at, and it just kind of helps keep my brain busy when I'm not doing anything. But other than that, I've actually been very disappointed in myself. I have not been the greatest note taker for this campaign that I'm playing in, and then I have made it a personal goal to be better in that role. And I think that's also a good thing, is like, if you know what kind of role you are, you can be better at other roles. You can say like, oh, I'm like a storyteller, but I'm not really good at creating that narrative through roleplay like an actor does. And that's something that I want to improve more on. And so you create a character that helps you be more in the roleplay aspect, and you practice. And then you might be a good problem solver, and you want to be more of an instigator, right? Where you solve problems and you're really good at note taking. But as far as actionable things, you say like, well, maybe I should act more on the information that I have instead of keep on waiting for more new stuff. That would be also interesting. Coulter Wilson says, hello, first time here. Welcome. What are we talking about? We're talking about different different player types at the table. So if you rewind, we talked about different players who are problem solvers, different players who are warriors who like combat more, people who are more actors and act things out more into the roleplay aspect of the game, instigators, storytellers, things like that. So, yeah, false start. Let's make a problem, not solve them today. Oh yeah, we never talked about the evil character, the one there just to play something contradictory to the players at hand. I have only had one evil character in my campaign. It was my first campaign before I realized that maybe you shouldn't have an evil character in a party of good aligned characters. But I feel like as long as you trust the player and you have a conversation on like how things are going to work out, I actually think it's actually a really fun thing to have an evil character. And I would love to play not play one myself, but play and DM a game with an evil player within it. Because the best way to do that is to have an evil, either a neutral evil or a lawful evil character that has the same ambitions and same goals as the party, but maybe not go about it the right way, right? So they're with the party and they have the same goals, so they're going the same direction. They're not contradictory to each other. So they see an opportunity and will stick with the party long term. But at the end of the day, they might be a little bit different in the head. And it's a cool kind of dynamic where that might come into play later, where the big reveal is with their evil, and depending on how you kind of tie it into the campaign, it'd be really fun. We also get to see Cleric here mispronounce instigator with investigator, yes. Apparently I went dyslexic for a moment there. I've not had problems with that before, but it is an instigator, you are correct. Oh my gosh, we're getting so many of these, guys. We have never gotten these before. We have never gotten these spam things before. Does that mean that we're getting more popular? Is that what that means? It says, Yumil Diaz, I love the idea of an evil character, but it sounds a bit tricky. Yes. There's a lot of videos on how to play an evil character, but at the end of the day, you play it like a good character until you don't. Does that make sense? You play it like a good character until you don't. So you play it like you would a character that you have in the party, regular, you get along with them, you have the same goals, you go the same direction, and that's what makes like the evil point where you reveal your evil a moment that you remember, is because you played a good character up until that point, but you had like this deep dark secret behind. And you can work with the DM too, and up until that point you could throw out some hints, right? Just throw out some hints maybe on some things that you do or say that could be missed unless another player picks up on it. Or you can just have the DM do that, where I'm sure they'd oblige, where they put you in a situation that could be tied to you, or an NPC that regards you as maybe a different person that they know, and it could be a little sketchy, right? But at that point, you probably want to be close to where you reveal, so it's kind of a build-up. It would be kind of harsh to have something happen right at the beginning of the campaign where you're not going to reveal something until like towards the end, and then they investigate it and they guess it like a few sessions in, right? Yeah, you play the good character until it reveals that you're the final boss, Dr. Nico. Absolutely. Yeah, I can write out. You're big enough that the bots have found me. You know, it's like I need an award. I need something to put up on a plaque. I need to copy paste that comment and put it on a little certificate and put it right here to remind me. I made it, guys. We've made it. We've made it. Yep. It says Coulter Wilson, wanting to make an undying warlock character whose purpose is to groom a PC to become the patron's host, though struggle to carry out the task and cut ties with the patron. Ooh, okay. Wanting to make an undying warlock character whose purpose is to groom a PC to make them the another patron of their host, though struggle to carry out the task and cut ties with the patron. Ooh, I like that. I like that. I like that. Two things. One, I have always wanted to get a player to make a Warlock pact and to level up in Warlock in-game without them having originally planned to do so. I think that would be so fun, right? They totally planned to play like a wizard the entire campaign, but some way, I convince them to make a Warlock pact and then they start leveling in Warlock. Because obviously, normally, the Warlock pact that they make is before the game even begins. And it is some evocative storytelling with a Warlock patron, where they convince them to make a pact and do that. Oh, that'd be so cool. That'd be so cool. And number two, it's good to plan those things. Say like, oh, I want to be an Undying Warlock character. I wouldn't say that they will struggle to carry out the task, because that's kind of like making choices outside of the situation that you're in. But definitely make them have a flaw where they struggle to manipulate people who are close to them, right? And just have that flaw instead of predetermining what you're going to roleplay, if that makes sense. And I feel like that has a lot more room to grow in ways that you want them to, or that is linear to the campaign and allowing the campaign to kind of influence your character and the other players to influence your character. So give them flaws, but don't plan out how their arc is going to be, because that can be anything and anything can happen. So don't plan their arc, but definitely give them some flaws that might suggest that direction in the future. But it's so cool. I love that idea. Love it, love it, love it. Cool. Well, guys, I think that's it. We didn't have a lot of like specific questions, but we had a lot of really cool like character exploration today. So I really appreciate you coming on and doing that. I'll check out that one video that you mentioned in the beginning, seeing if I need to like do these live streams a little bit different to get people or get more people on when I do. But anyways, to get this one more out there, make sure to like the video and comment your player type, who you are, and maybe one that you want to do better at, right? Whether you want to be a better actor, a better instigator, a better problem solver, things like that would be interesting. So, anyways, this weekend, check out my videos. Obviously, we got a bunch of spooky stuff coming this this month, which I'm super excited about. But in the meantime, go out there and spread the good word of D&D and make the world a better place, both on and off your tables. See you in the next one.